This is simply the best integrated bracelet watch I've come across. I've gotten to handle a couple of the top integrated bracelet watches, namely the Patek 5711, the Nautilus, the AP Royal Oaks, and the Vacheron Constantin overseas. But this one, it's the best. This watch is one of H. Moser's most popular new offerings, the Streamliner Center Seconds. There are a couple of other offerings within the Streamliner model range, and they are these. So the Streamliner Center Seconds really is the base version of the Streamliner watches. At first glance, it's simply a three-hander, but it's not that simple. I'll shortly get into the crux of the matter, how and why this watch is the perfect integrated bracelet watch. So what does this watch offer? Considering that this is a hot horology independent brand, H. Moser, this watch offers exclusivity. Now whether it's in terms of the numbers of pieces H. Moser produces or the price tag of 20,000 Swiss francs for this particular watch, it's exclusive. The dimensions of this watch make it a pleasure to have on the wrist. On video, you may see this as a nice, unique and somewhat attractive design that looks to be made with high quality materials and manufacturing techniques, which is true, but you do not get to experience the in-hand feel, which is oh so magical. And that is because of the biggest X factor of this watch, the stupendously amazing bracelet. Now, I haven't experienced every single bracelet out there, but I've experienced some of the best, or what people regard as some of the best. And to me, this one-ups all of those. It definitely outperforms the big three, AP, VC, and Patek. Integrated bracelet watches seem to have been the bee's knees since the 70s, and it seems like this non-user-friendly design is here to stay. Watches designed with an integrated bracelet really force watch brands to make it good. Well, the bracelet, actually, and the watch. The whole thing as a package needs to be really, really good. You're not going to swap out the bracelet for a non-OEM part, and because of that, it has to be equally as well designed and machined as the case of the watch, which is a feat that not every brand is up to par with. Let me ground my reasons, 3 reasons why I think this particular bracelet has achieved integrated bracelet perfection. So my first reason is unique design. There are a lot of people that say this takes after Able watches and that bracelet design. Well, it's a similar structure. You can't do that much when you have integrated bracelet watches and you don't use a multi-link system. You just have one link. So you can't really innovate that much in terms of the articulation of the links. It's got to be kind of like the scales of a snake. And this essentially is a unique design to me. I do think the bracelet really stands out as something quite completely reworked. And when you have it on the wrist, it feels every bit fantastic. Now, the second reason is solidness and machining precision. Many fancy bracelets that are really design and aesthetic focused are extremely dainty and fragile feeling in the hand. This is not one of those. This is not a 5711 bracelet. That bracelet feels really fragile. This feels a lot better. This feels solid. The third reason, and one of the more important reasons apart from aesthetics, is the comfort on the wrist. And this watch scores extremely well in that realm because the bracelet links articulate really well. They didn't rip out any of the hairs on my wrist, but I'm sure there'll be people that do experience that. But overall, I think the way the watch links articulate around the curvature of your wrist, it's very much appreciated and it feels solid at the same time, which is hard to achieve. Now, in terms of the watch itself, the case, the dial, the movement, there are a few things that stand out, which I want to go over. I actually want to start with some things that don't appeal as much to me. Here, not everything about this watch is to my taste. Starting with the case design. This case is slightly cushion shaped, which is not my favorite style of case shape. I think this is certainly a fantastic execution on all fronts of the case design. There's nothing amiss. Just preference that leads my interest towards a less soft squared approach. What is amazing though is the side profile of the case. I really like the way they added dimensionality to the profile through the use of chamfering and through the use of polishing and matte sections. Well, through the use of polished and matte sections. The profile is not boring at all. There's a lot of dimensionality to it and there's a lot of reflections to it, which makes it look cooler. Well, it is cooler, so which makes it look as cool as it is. The best thing is it's not slab-sided at all on the wrist, and that's a key point in terms of making the watch charming on the wrist. The dial itself, I've got to say, this isn't my cup of tea. It's rich in design elements from the uncommon handset. So the hands, what's going on with the hands? You can see that the metal part ends and then the lume continues. But the lume itself, unlike in most watches, is not just a dried application of a wet substance. That sounds weird. The lume itself is not just superluminova applied. Well, how's it floating? It's actually a ceramic construction. I don't know the details. You can find the details. But the thing is, my point is, it looks really cool. Now the rich green fume dial, not my cup of tea. This is what I don't care for as much. I don't really appreciate fume in dials because I see it as a trend. I see it as something that's kind of fashionable and not really solid. And it seems like a design pattern that you would see on some sort of dyed t-shirts. The blue fume on the other Streamliners, I find it nice. Okay, I gotta say, I find it nice. But this green, I see it more as a pattern and not as something that's suited to a 20,000 Swiss franc watch. Now, a lot of people disagree with me on this because the fume is what gives the watch dial its entire aesthetic appeal and dimensionality. I understand that, but it's just not my thing. The choice of green, it's a nice, rich green. There's a lot of shades you can see it as, depending on the lighting, but it's still not my thing. The blue, that's where it's at. And in general, I find this dial a little bit plain. You'd say, well, it's not plain because of the hands, the fume, but if you ignore those things, in terms of complications, I find this dial a little lacking because of the size of the watch. And it seems like there's a lot of space in the dial, and I would like to see that filled up with some kind of cool complications. Now, if you're going into a hot horology watch brand, well, if I was going into one, I would want complications. Here's my philosophy. If you want a three-hander, you want a watch that's an everyday piece and you want it to be rather muted looking and not so fancy. If you want a fancy watch, I would see it as something where you want complications, you want to go all out. But this is neither here and nor there. That's why I like the Streamliners with complications. So the chronograph version, the flyback chronograph, or one of the perpetual calendars, that's really cool to me. It breaks symmetry. I don't care for symmetry. That's why I like those more. As much as I would like to talk about the movement, I can only appreciate the aesthetics of it. As most horology watch brands, you're paying for the aesthetics and the intricacy behind each polished, brushed and striped edge of the movement, along with extremely high material quality, not really technical prowess. That's not what you're paying for. You're paying for the hand-built side of things and not the precisionist side of things. So does this movement do something very uniquely in terms of design or functionality? Not sure. It's a three-hander. I don't know the specifics of exactly how each part of the movement was designed, so I can't call it really special, even if it is. To me, it's a three-hander automatic caliber with a 72-hour power reserve, and it looks absolutely beautiful. There is where I give it points. It looks amazing. But I want more. I want it to look amazing and do something unique, something cool. That's what I mean by complication. I want to know your thoughts, put them in the comments below. I know there's a lot of people who love the 5711s, the AP Royal Oaks, and diehard fans of those, and would never consider this to be the same thing as that or better than that. But I've handled those and I like this one more.